Hello everybody, welcome to All the Buzz, the new show that's taking Austin by storm and hopefully going all around the world on the internet. My name is John Theofanis and I'm the host for the show, and at this point I always bring in my handmade signs. My director's not all that fond of them. Here's the show, All the Buzz, and there's the director, Cody Davis. My name, John Theofanis. I'm your host. And today we have a wonderful guest. His name is Lester Morris. That's a good British name, isn't it? Well, in fact, Lester Morris is the Brit. And you'll learn a lot about that today. This is the second show we've taped, and it happens to be St. Patrick's Day. I've got my St. Patrick's teddy bear, green hat and all, and the teddy bear will have a greater meaning also as the show goes along and you learn about Lester Morris. Lester is a unique individual, had an amazing childhood. I've known him for about 8 years, and it was always my desire to try to capture Lester's early years so people could learn about his amazing life, which he's written about in a book called The Violets Are Mine, Story of an Unwanted Orphan. And when I first heard about Lester's story, I said, oh my God, this is Charles Dickens in the 20th century. And there are amazing stories which always bring to mind Charles Dickens. And you know, my father never made literary references, but he grew up in the Depression, and his family was on relief for a while. The one literary reference he made was when Oliver says, "Please, sir, I want some more," and the headmaster goes, "Ha ha ha!" And everybody breaks into laughter. And I think for my father, that was some indication that he knew what it was like to want more and not be able to get it. And Lester, the more I thought about your story, I've decided it's even grander than Charles Dickens. I would compare it to the Odyssey of Homer, the story of Odysseus, who left his home for 10 years to face all kinds of challenges, the Cyclops, the sirens that tried to tempt his sailors, and he had to think of ways to keep the sailors from hearing the beautiful sounds of the women and to meet their death. Lester took a journey that lasted more than 10 years, and even more amazing, he was not an adult. His journey began at just a couple of years of age, and it extended for the next 15 years or so. And in that time, he had to become an adult physically, mentally, and go through all the changes of childhood. And here's the amazing part. Lester is a liberated person, liberated from that harsh upbringing. I feel one of the keys to Lester Morris is his ability to tell the truth. He doesn't repress painful stories. He describes them in his book in vivid detail. And he's freed his heart to laugh. He's an accomplished public speaker. And I hope that you will learn, as I did, about your own childhood by hearing about one that's probably much more extreme than anything you experienced in terms of challenges, difficulties, and overcoming them. So please welcome Mr. Lester Morris. Thank you, Lester, on St. Patty's Day.
Pleasure.
Great to have you here. And I'm trying to think of a good kicking off point. I know you were in 4 orphanages, and there are some villains and some heroes. And one of the great heroes or heroines is Mrs. Woodley, and she helped provide the title for your book, All the Violets Are Mine, Tales of an Unwanted Orphan. So explain the significance of the violets to us.
Well, Mrs. Woodley was like a fairy godmother at the orphanage, and she used to live in a tiny little village, a thatched cottage, and they used to walk in every day through, or sometimes cut through a cornfield, And on this particular day, she saw these violets growing along the hedgerow, and she picked some up and then put them in little bunches and gave one to my brother and one to me. And because we were asking everyone we could, adults, where are we going? Because we were the only two, my brother and I, that were told to put our best clothes on. Everyone else was to put their play clothes on. And she said, give these to wherever you're going because it's Mother's Day.
So you were leaving the orphanage on Mother's Day.
When I was 9 years of age.
And you and Doug, your older brother, were given these violets by Mrs.
Woodley, yeah. And before getting in the bag, we both had to carry a bag, one of these, paper bags with our worldly goods in. And I was carrying the teddy bear that I was given when I first went to the orphanage. And the matron snatched it from me and ran off to the study and threw it in with me screaming behind her, that's mine, and said, no, it belongs here.
She didn't want you to.
So I was sitting there with these violets in the back of the master's car, the only thing I had to hang on to that was mine, and really upset. We had no idea where we were going, and the master didn't say anything. And off we went, and then we're taken to these horrible people to be fostered out, being delivered like a UPS package. That's the way I put it.
And then you arrived at the foster parents' home, and you immediately got a bad feeling about it. You told me.
Well, the person that met us was this woman.
Teeth.
And I nicknamed her Teeth because of obvious reasons, but she was to become my so-called mother. And I rejected her right from the start. And the foster father was a thin, thick, bushy-eyebrowed man who looked very wiry, and someone described him as a flint-like. And I thought that was a nice expression. And I didn't get on with either of them. My brother was a goody-good, so he got away with all sorts, and he got a far better treatment than I did.
You were a pretty colorful personality even back then.
Right. Well, but the master was with us when we were dropped off, and my brother Doug gave this foster mother his violets, a bunch of violets, and then the master said, "Well, just give yours to the." I said, "No, these are mine," and I hid them behind my back, and I said, "Give them over," and he boxed my ears. I said, "No," I said, "Mrs. Woodley gave these. The violets are mine."
Amazing.
So this is where the title.
It makes me think of, I have an 8-year-old grandson, and these kids about the age when you were being transported from orphanage to a foster home, they've got iPhones and clothes and music and
Right.
on and on, but your whole worldly possessions, as you put it, were some violet flowers from Mrs. Woodley. It's a very, very touching story. Lester, when I first met you, I've learned some interesting terms from you, and what does it make me go to the top of my head of the stairs? What is that one?
That's just an old saying in England when you're surprised. You go, well, I'll go to the foot of my stairs.
I'll go to the foot of my
Foot of my stairs, and I got my next door neighbour saying that now. She's surprised about something.
And you say a lot of problems can be settled over a cup of tea?
That seems to be the thing, and even in old movies today, you see that they say, well, I'll make you a nice cup of tea. And say problems seem to be sorted out over a cup of tea. So
that's a nice tradition. They drink coffee here. They still drink tea in England, I'm guessing.
Yeah, and I remember when tea bags first come out, I was up all night cutting them open trying to get the tea out, and I thought, that's a stupid way to pack.
Yeah, it's just actually, we can date you a little bit. Lester just told me that he was in the orphanage when Elizabeth, the present Queen of England, that's been in power for 60 years or more, was on TV, her coronation, and You experienced that in the...
Well, yeah, when she got the gold hat in '52, was it? Someone lent the orphanage a television, and we always all together around in the dining room in the corner, and the television was on, and we was instructed that we're watching and witnessing history, which we were, and the Queen was getting the gold hat, and I said to the master, well, how did it? And he said, this is all live down in London, and you're watching something live, he says. I said, well, how is it coming through? He said, through a signal. So I was out on the front lawn, he couldn't find me, and then when he saw me standing on the front lawn, he said, what are you? I said, I'm looking for this signal, and I couldn't understand how it got into that little box there. But that was quite an experience.
Another indicator of Lester's childhood, historically speaking, was the sounds you heard overhead that you said made you cover your ears.
Oh, during the war, the big Lancaster bombers used to fly over and the whole house would shake. And you had a prior indication when they said, because the assistant matron used to stand there and automatically put her hands over her ears, which was an indication to us that there was going to be a loud noise. And so we all followed suit. Well, sometimes the smaller ones didn't see it, and then they all started screaming and shouting. But that was a deafening noise when they were that low. But the worst ones were the Spitfires, when they used to zoom over and fright the life out of you. You hadn't got much warning about them coming.
Yes, so Lester's boyhood, World War II war rations. Well, I was growing up in the 60s in New York. And so Lester's introduced some terms to me, and as a fan of all the buzz, you're going to learn a new term today, perhaps. Some of you know it, which is a penny farthing bike. And Lester has a chapter in his book, one of the first ones, called Green Penny Farthing Bike, which sort of captures the highs and lows of your existence as a young man. So explain to them what that kind of bike is.
Well, it's one of these great big bikes, and in the front of the book there's a picture of that very bike. Like this one here. Mm-hmm. This is called a penny farthing because the big wheel at the front was about the size of the old big penny. Mm-hmm. And then the minuscule wheel at the rear was about the size of a farthing, which is a quarter of a penny. So it was nicknamed Penny Farthing. It had other names, Bone Shaker and things like that. But this thing was in a shed with all this other junk, and when it was raining, we all used to hide in there and talk and and fiddle around. And I spotted this bike, and but when the master came out, I said, "Can I clean it and get it out?" And I said, "What is it?" And one of the lads told me it was a farting bike. and and I said to the master, "Can I get that farting bike out?" He said, "It's a farthing, penny farthing." And I got corrected there. And so I cleaned it, and it turned out it was green. And I said, "Can I ride it?" He said, "You'd have difficulty getting on it, let alone riding it, But he said, "You're welcome." And he said, I don't think I would be able to ride it. But I did master it. Mm-hmm. And I kept going round and round. And getting on and off was the difficult part. And I got plenty of bruises to prove I come off all right, But getting on, I used to get on this rock and use that as a stepping stone to get on and push myself off. And then one day, someone left the gate open. The orphanage was at the top of the hill, and there was a sign on there, "Keep gate shut." Delivery people. Delivery chap came in, delivered whatever it was. I was going round and round in this small tarmac area, bored to tears. And this van drove off, and I thought, the gate's open. He didn't shut the gate. And every time I went round, I thought, I can get through there. And I kept going, and then eventually I got nearer and nearer, and I looked around, there was no one outside. And next thing I was going up the road, and the humming.
Liberation, huh?
The wheel was incredible. So when I got to the top, I turned round at the vicarage and then came back, and I thought I'd go back faster than and as I approached the gate, I applied the brake lever, and it shuddered. but this metal plate used to hit the big front rubber wheel, the tyre, and it shuddered and just fell off.
Uh-oh.
And at 70 years old, you haven't got the gut to, make quick decisions. And so the next thing, I was heading down this 1 in 10 steep hill and ended up in a brook. Damaged the bicycle. The policeman come along and took me up the hill, and then after the policeman had a cup of tea, I didn't get one. He had a cup of tea. I was put in a bath, and they beat 7 colours of dandruff out of me for doing that.
They physically beat you.
And then the policeman came back in again because he left his socks there, and saw them beating me, and he couldn't get over it. He says there's a war going on out there, and people are being killed, and a lot of people are being suffering. And he said, I didn't expect to see suffering in an orphanage. He's already apologised and all that, and of course he pushed me on the floor, and after the policeman went, he was wanted to know who let him in. But I know today it was Mrs. Woodley that let him in.
Oh, wow. She let the police officer.
Yeah.
So, Mrs. Woodley, of course, the lady that gives you the violets when you left that home,
Right.
you said she also kind of helped you out with food a little bit?
Well, we used to, my brother and I, she used to take us down to her little house where she got free-range chickens. And it was fun going around collecting eggs. We'd find them all over the place. Sometimes we'd tread on one, and you expect to get a hiding or something like that. No, it's all right, And then the chickens will eat it, And then we collected eggs for her, and she'd donate them to the orphanage, what she didn't want. And so that was fun, doing little things like that.
And one amazing thing to me, I think the second story I ever heard from you was about a yellow truck in the play area of the orphanage. Could you explain that one?
Yeah, there was a yellow, like today you got these big Tonka trucks. Well, this was a tin, a ball plastic, Bakelite type pickup truck that I used to love to play with and put stuff in and tip it up and all that. And then this other lad come along and snatched it off me. He said, I was playing with that, And I was arguing with him. And then the assistant matron came along, and she stands there with her hands on her hips and starts giving all the rules, She took it off me and gave it to this other lad, And as she walked away, I said, you only gave it to him because he was big and ugly? And she turned around, she said, that's no way to talk to your brother, about your brother. And I said, brother? And we both looked at each other. We both more or less said at the same time, brother? I said, what's a brother? She said, well, it means you're related to each other. And I didn't. So after she went, he said, so you're my brother? I said, no, I'm your brother. He didn't even know what a brother was,
Wow.
And so after that, he gave me the truck back and we became friends.
I wonder how many people in our audience could say they met their sibling unannounced at the age of, 7 years or something?
Yeah, 7 years.
Wow. And, Lester, you described being beaten. I'm sure many years have passed since then, but that's a horrible, it characterized a lot of your childhood. And didn't you say that they got angry at you because of the policeman and then went further with the punishment when they realized that Bobby had come back?
When he came back, they even gave me more punishment, and then you're no food for 3 days.
Woo!
And this is how they saved on it, because we were on rationing. So if they could put kids on punishment by reducing their food intake, they saved food that way, So that was another way.
And we have so much food in this country now that obesity is a problem.
Right.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Wow. And you moved from, what's the name of that village? Ashton or something?
Ashton in Essex.
Ashton in Essex. And you went to the foster home with teeth. And this, I hope the viewers don't think I'm trying to rub their face in some of the difficulties, but of course it's easy for us, we're just listening 60 years later or whatever. But
70
years later, tell us about, I'm trying to remember the incident where, I think all it was you came home late from school. Your brother had sort of become the favorite of Teeth.
Right.
And you just showed up late, and we could even read the passage, but maybe you should talk about it a little bit.
My teacher at the school was very nice, and she kept me behind when everyone left to go home. And the foster parents used to time me from the time I left school to the time I got home, and if I was late, she wanted to know why, and then also, doesn't matter what the reason was, she still wants an excuse to beat me, And this particular time, the teacher was on about that we need to work on certain things to get your grades up a bit, and suggested I took home some homework, which we didn't used to do in those days. And because I was late getting home, the foster mother was there, and then when she lost her temper, she used to swing her arms around like a windmill, hit every part of the body she could, and then end up by grabbing hold of my arm and biting it.
Wow.
And this time she bit that hard that she left teeth marks in my arm, and blood was it, and boxed me ears and sent me to bed. No food, no bandage or nothing like that.
Wow.
The next morning I came down to get ready for school, and there was dry blood around there and all that, and it was still hurting. And my brother was saying, well, put it under the tap. So I was doing that, and the teeth came in, and she looked at it, and I think she was surprised to see how bad it was. She got this bottle of iodine, tipped it on there, and I just screamed like it, And she put this bandage round and boxed me ears, like, shut up, and wrapped this bandage round and said, just keep that on and don't start showing people. Well, during the day at school, this bandage kept slipping down. So my teacher called me out. And she said, let me adjust that. And I said, no, it's all right. And she got hold of the bandage and took it off. And then she said, someone's been biting you? And I said, well, yeah. She said, who? And I hung my head, and I said, well, the foster mother. She bites you? And I said, yeah. And I said, because I was late coming home from school yesterday. And she said, well, I kept you, And she felt that sorry, and that it was her fault, that she actually hugged me.
Yes.
And this was at 9 years of age, and that was my very first hug in life.
Whoa.
At 9.
Hug your kid today.
And she was hilly.
Hilly, yeah, that's a Lesterism right there, right? You're going like this. Explain.
Hilly, big-breasted. And so I'm buried in her breast and singing "The Hills Are Alive." And a couple of days later, I went over to her and I said, I've got more teeth mark.
Wow.
And she looked at, she said, those teeth are smaller. And I said, I bit my own, because I wanted to get another hug.
Oh my gosh.
She said, you don't have to bite your arm to get another hug. She said, you come over anytime you want and I'll give you a hug.
Do you have your reading glasses with you, Lester? I want to maybe get you to read, if you can see in the light here. This is the passage where I guess the master, you call him, or the Mr. Green, I guess it would be.
The door burst open, and as he entered the room, he started taking off his big, thick leather belt. I tried to tell him why I was late, but he totally ignored me and shouted at the top of his voice, I am fed up with you upsetting your mother, and the only way to teach you is to beat some sense out of you. And he did just that. He stripped my trousers down, threw me over on his knee, and thrashed the hell out of my bum with his, making sure that the belt buckle hit me good. And I was shouting at the same time that I was screaming my head off all this time, trying to tell him why I was late from school.
Wow.
But he didn't want to know.
He didn't want to know. So you faced all kinds of harsh treatment that most children don't have to endure. Plus, I noticed food is a primary concern, and you told a funny story. You said even orphanage boys get to go out for tea once in a while, and wasn't there a lady that took you to her house for a week, and you
Right.
got to eat strawberries, right?
And ice cream and stuff like that I'd never had before, but she was lovely, and it really spoiled me for that week, and took my teddy bear and fixed it up, and it had no eyes, and she bought some eyes from a store and had some eyes put in it.
Yeah, this
They
one
were
has eyes.
crayoned in, and then it had an arm missing, and it had hardly any fur on it, and there was patches of where sawdust was coming out of it all the time. And she fixed it up, and I thought the world of it, you know. But she spoilt me by giving me all these extra stuff, and the next thing I was put back in the orphanage again. It was like, no, and I ran away from the orphanage, making my way back to her, wherever that was, I had no idea. And there happened to be the assistant matron coming along, and she got hold of me and put me in the car and went back another hiding, you know.
So Lester, I hope we get a chance to talk a little further in the next segment about you getting a little bit older. But in wrapping this portion up, I wanted to ask you, how do you think you survived these experiences to become the person you are today, and not hold grudges, not let this destroy you?
Well, I think, you know, eventually the older you get, the more wiser you get, you know, and you realise that there are a lot of cruel people out there who, and it seems to be that the word orphan, as soon as you mention that you're an orphan, it gives people license to do whatever they will with you, like you're a reject or something like that, you know. But I learned to survive all that, and it was joining the British Army for 6 years that really turned me around.
That was a positive, finally a positive change in your life.
Yeah.
And I know there was amazing stories about your running away from an orphanage, which we maybe can get to ask you about in a few minutes, and then actually meeting your birth father at a later point in your life when you were on the verge of adulthood. And of course, we want to hear about your sex life, which finds its way into the book too, right?
Right. Eventually, yeah.
And I know the audience will want some words of encouragement and perhaps sexual guidance from you.
Okay. All right.
So this has been the end of our first segment with Mr. Lester Morris, author of The Violets Are Mine, Tales of an Unwanted Orphan, and a truly remarkable man.